the front office, it's not dumb. They know what they're doing. They have a plan. They're really good at what they do, you know, and they have always put us in the best spot to be successful every single year. Sometimes it's going out spending money. Sometimes it's cutting budget, you know. But they're gonna put us in the best spot to be successful, and then it's on us for us to perform. If we don't perform, it don't matter who you got. You ain't going nowhere.
Francisco Lindor talking about the Cleveland Indians front office, a front office and an ownership group that's taken some heat recently because they've cut payroll this year. Got us to thinking, who is the best ownership group in Cleveland, the best front office? And with that, we will bring in Doug Lesmerises, columnist from cleveland.com. And Doug, what do you say? Who is the best ownership group front office in Cleveland?
I don't know that there's a clear number one, because I think if you could take different parts of the different teams, you might end up with a great ownership front office structure. The Browns and the Cavs have two owners in Jimmy Haslam and Dan Gilbert that have spent money. You know, Jimmy Haslam let them spend $16 million on Brock Osweiler so they could get a draft pick that turned into Nick Chubb. And Dan Gilbert did whatever it took financially, and, you know, in the end has a title. Now, you know, LeBron James is 99% responsible for that, but I do think money does matter. Now, decision-making matters too. So I think the two teams that have spent the money have made the worst decisions. The Indians have the best decision-makers in the front office with Chris Antonetti and that crew, but you can make the best decisions in the world if you don't have any money to spend. Sometimes being smart isn't enough. So I think all three structures in this city are flawed to some degree and good to some degree. So I think overall the Indians have the best structure, but I also think, you know, when they're in a championship window right now and cutting payroll, you certainly can't look at that and say that's great ownership.
Well, and, you know, it's compounded by the fact that baseball is the one league, one sport where you can spend as much money as you want to spend. So in some ways, baseball fans probably wish they had somebody that would spend all that money running the baseball franchise, because the Indians are one of those organizations, and there's probably 25 of them that can't outspend their mistakes.
And I think Indians fans realize that, right? When you're competing in the American League, and again, we're parsing the Indians to some degree because our complaint is, well, we know they're going to win the division. Well, that's a great thing. The playoffs are assumed. But at this stage with where they are right now, there's a cliff coming. When you're a small market team like that, you've got to maximize when you have this window, because you're going to fall off a cliff. And I think fans understand that, and you'll rebuild, and that's fine. But you're competing with the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Dodgers and teams with a lot more money than you. And, you know, for fans, it's like, I get it. There's payroll constraints, but they're all rich guys. So, like, I know it's tough, but how can the Indians be in a spot right now where they're scrimping on the outfield when they have maybe the best rotation in baseball? The money, the money matters, right? Dan Gilbert drives you nuts. The letter about LeBron and the way he's handled general managers, it drives you crazy. But man, sometimes your wallet can do a lot of talking, and I do think when it mattered to the Cavs, Dan Gilbert's wallet did a lot of talking.
Yeah, without question. The challenge with the Cavs and Dan Gilbert is he spent a lot of money on players, but it's been very interesting. When LeBron has been on the Cavs, they've been in the playoffs, and they've won about 67% of the games. When LeBron has not been on the Cavs, they've won about 29% of the games, and those little asterisks, that's when they've had the first overall pick in the draft. So the ping pong ball that brought you LeBron and the fact that he was from Akron is one of the reasons the Cavs have that championship. And Doug, my concern with that is, why haven't you put the infrastructure in place to make basketball decisions? You had a really good guy in Dave Griffin.
Yeah.
And boy, it shouldn't be finals for 4 years in a row, back to the lottery where we might get the first pick, although some would argue that's the way the NBA is.
Yeah, no, I would argue that too. I'm all for like win tank, basically in every sport. The best thing Dan Gilbert has done is get lucky, right? The Cavs have been the luckiest lottery team in the league, and if they didn't have all those first round picks, they'd be in a very different spot. The problem is guys like us and a lot of fans, your dream owner is give us all your money and none of your input. And I wrote that a couple months ago with the Haslams, like, hand over the check and go away. And that is just not a realistic thing to do. So I think in Dan Gilbert and Jimmy Haslam, you have guys who will write checks, but then who want to be involved and who want to be involved in basketball and football decisions and are sometimes wary about giving too much power to the sporting decision makers and are sometimes influenced too much by who's in their ear and making rash decisions with firing people, but they'll hand over the money. The Dolans are not rash. The Dolans are not meddling, but sometimes you'd like a little more of their money. So, I mean, there maybe, I don't know who the best owner in sports is, but I imagine it's someone who says, I'm going to do I'm going to do this and this. Here's my money and none of my mouth. And if we could get one of those in Cleveland, I think that'd be the ultimate owner.
Well, we talked a little bit about the Browns and the Haslams, and boy, has it been a challenge to get the right structure in place for the Browns. And it finally seems like they got that right. You see the executives they've gone through. That's since 2010. And if you follow suit with the head coaches, it's usually an equal 1-for-1. So it's been a continuing wheel. And, Doug, the ironic thing is they weren't 500 last year, and everybody's thrilled because John Dorsey came in, had a great draft, and now you've got a coach in place that has a tight relationship with a guy that you think is going to be a franchise quarterback. Amazing what those two things can do for a franchise, huh?
Yeah, it seems so simple, right? It's like, why did it take so long? It's easy. The structure, as we've talked and written about ad nauseam, structure with Jimmy Haslam was such a problem. You set up infighting by having coaches and general managers with equal power, both battling for Jimmy Haslam's ear. They've fixed that now, where John Dorsey is Freddie Kitchens' boss. That is good. I do think it's possible that maybe we're jumping the gun a little bit on John Dorsey being the end-all, be-all savior. This is the right guy for this. He was set up in a lot of ways to succeed with the draft capital and the salary cap space they've had, and he has executed that pretty well so far. But now we're going to get into like a time when, like, all right, they're ready for this. There's a lot of things in place for the Browns to win, and now can he hold it together? Remember that John Dorsey's a guy who did get fired in Kansas City. It wasn't because he couldn't evaluate talent. They liked the way he could evaluate talent. It was more about running the organization from top to bottom and getting along with people and doing those kind of things. So I think they're in a great spot. I think the Browns clearly are in a better spot than they've been, but that's almost impossible to not be better because it's been on fire for so long. But I do think we maybe have to hold back a little bit on thinking it's 100% fixed until we see how John Dorsey does sort of maintaining things now that it's kind of built a little.
Doug Lesmerises, we appreciate the insight. As always, Doug Lesmerises, columnist from cleveland.com.